Online dog training comes with its own list of pros and cons, from navigating who you should be listening to and knowing what is something that you can learn online versus what requires face-to-face training for your dog. Heidi from Dogmanship Training joins us on the Therapy Dogs Australia podcast today to weigh in on this discussion. Having worked extensively in the dog training industry, Heidi saw an opportunity to create training courses online in an effort to reach a greater number of dog owners in need of advice. Years later, we now have the privilege of hearing her perspective around online dog training and how it's helped so many people create a better life for their dog. Strap yourselves in and enjoy.
All right, welcome to another episode with the Therapy Dogs Australia podcast. Today we've got Heidi from Dogmanship Training. How are you, Heidi?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Oh,
good to see you, Heidi.
Yeah, good to have you on.
It's nice to see your faces. Instead of emails, yeah.
So today we're going to discuss some of the pros and cons to online dating.
We should discuss that.
I'm going to start that again.
I actually have a lot to contribute
I don't
to
know
that.
that I'm going to be much use, but I'm still curious.
We're going to start that again. So today we're going to discuss the pros and cons to online dog training. And Heidi, you run online dog training courses, don't you?
Yeah. So I have a program called the Dogmanship Training Academy. So essentially my biggest goal is to teach dog owners how to teach their dogs. So I find that the online platform is great for that. And my biggest goal is to really help people teach their dogs to be well behaved in all their usual life situations so that they can actually really have them as part of their life and family instead of sort of being pushed to the outskirts because of their behaviors a little bit. So, yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's what we all want.
Yeah,
really.
that's exactly right.
For all of us.
That's it. And that's the thing, when most people get a dog and bring a dog home, you know, their goal is that they have all of these images in their head of having these great family times, their dogs being able to hang out with their kids and go for walks at the beach and all of that sort of stuff. But very often it ends up not being the case. And slowly, the dog gets less freedom and less time with the family because those behaviors creep in.
Yeah.
And we see them, they're locked outside because they can't be inside because of their behavior, and then the frustration that builds and a bit of boredom and, loneliness, and then we get, destructive behaviors and things like that. And it just spirals.
Yeah, absolutely. I call it the freedom stairs because it's like you've got like at the top of your staircase, you've got like this ultimate freedom of, they can be a part of your family and go on adventures with you and be off lead and do all that stuff. And at the bottom of the stairs, it's like the dog is literally in the backyard because you cannot even do anything with them. But when you start adding in training, it might be just doing a small amount of training, like teaching your dog to stay on their bed. And then all of a sudden they get one step closer to that freedom because they can be inside with you. And then you start working on loose lead walking, and all of a sudden they get to go out again, and you sort of can creep up that stairs. It doesn't have to sort of be all or nothing at the start. Those little things that you can do make such a big difference in the dog's overall well-being, and therefore everybody in the house, really.
Yeah, and when you break it down like that, I feel like it makes it way more manageable for people to go, okay, just focus on the one.
Yeah, absolutely. And also because it can feel so overwhelming. Like most people will contact me because their dog's like being reactive on walks or, bowling the kids over or whatever it might be. And it can feel like a big leap from where they are now to having like, I'm like, oh no, your dog will be able to walk past and, be okay and come inside and lay on their bed. And they're like, as if, like that's not going to happen. Feels like such like a pie in the sky kind of goal. But I think when you sort of just look at those little things and take the little steps, it also keeps you motivated and gives you something to be like, all right, even if we just do one thing, we're going to make a big difference. It's going to make our lives easier and our dogs' lives better, which is usually why most people contact me, is because their life is hard and their dog's life is not fun. And so that's why they get in touch.
Yeah, we definitely see like once you've taught the first thing, the next thing's so much easier and the next thing and the next thing. Because we've now, through teaching this first thing, like we always try and start with something easy.
Yeah.
And then, you've got the skills then from that, and we just generalize those skills to the next activity and the next activity and the next activity, and the dogs just get it.
Yeah,
Like they just
absolutely.
get it.
They
Once you
do.
get
They're so
language,
smart.
yeah, I mean, once you've got a language that, you can just apply that to the next thing. It's not like starting from scratch all over again. And I think too, for a lot of it, like my job is like 5% training dogs and 95% training people. And so I think once people can wrap their heads around how it works, they can, and they've seen it happen one time, they can start going, oh, like now I see how I would apply that same thing to when my dog jumps up or runs out the gate or whatever it might be, and they can start to generalize how they're going to do it and sort of see ahead, which is usually like by the time, so in the Dogmanship Training Academy, we have the Good Dog Blueprint, which is like the step by step. So they go through 4 phases as they're training their dog, so that they're not sort of too overwhelmed, and so that their dogs, like they're getting that sort of snowball, right? They're getting that effect of it and not sort of jumping, because what people tend to do is jump straight into the behavior problem solving without having any foundation. And so we start off working on those sorts of things. But I think that when people really come in and they sort of start working on, say, sit or drop or something like that, they start to sort of be like, this isn't really what I'm here for. Like,
Yeah.
this isn't really what I signed up for.
Yeah.
But then start to see that progression and start to see how that, if they have that language, by the end of, say, phase 2, I want them to sort of be able to look at a behavior and be like, I think I know how to fix that without even watching the video, like I've got an idea of what I would do. So that's sort of essentially, and I think too, one of the biggest issues with dog training, or how people approach dog training, is really that people do jump in and try and solve the problem from the get-go. Like the first thing they do is be like, all right, my dog's reactive on lead, so I want a trainer to come over and go for a walk with me right now and show me how to fix it on the lead. When realistically, if you work on, like, that's just a symptom of the underlying problem. If you deal with that first, everything else becomes easier.
We see that all the time.
Yeah.
When we do our courses, so whether someone does an intensive, which is 4 or 5 days in a row, or the typical, which is 4 or 5 weeks of 1 day a week, by the end of the course, and we're not problem solving, so we don't deal with problem behaviors in the course. If people need help with problem behaviors, we do that outside of the course.
Yeah.
But I mean, we touch on stuff, like mouthing and stuff like that. That's really important, that we need to get sorted. It's so easy to do.
Yeah.
But by the time they get, so we do sit, drop, loose lead walking, recall on the mat, and impulse control. I think that's it. It's such a small selection of skills, like manners and skills combined. But by the end of the course, even the one that I just finished one last week that was an intensive, every single person in the course was like, my dog is a totally different dog on Friday afternoon to what they were at 8:55 a.m. on Monday morning.
Yeah.
And that's just from teaching them across
huge.
5 days.
Yes, well, that's exactly right.
Basic stuff.
Yep. Sometimes I'll get an email from somebody like 2 days after they've joined up for the online program, because they can join at any time. And they will say, like, already I've noticed such a shift in my dogs, like just how they're being around me, like just their general demeanor and our relationship and all of that sort of stuff. Or they'll say something, and this is so common, they've been working on like sit or something like that, and then they'll say, but we've been working on sit, but our real problem was that he was stealing food or he was doing this and that, and all of a sudden he stopped doing that. And it's like, you've changed that relationship, and everything else shifts, like it changes. And that's it, because if you're training a command in a way that's not just a trick, it's actually working on their mindset and working on their outlook on how they see you and the world, then of course that's going to shift everything else. Like it's not, nothing you do with your dog is an individual thing. Everything impacts everything. And so when you make those changes, of course something else is going to shift as well.
I actually found that it was so interesting. I have a 10-month-old Groodle, and so we've been on quite the training journey together as well, which has been fantastic. He's amazing. Yeah. But one thing that I was doing differently, I got him around the time I started working for therapy dogs as well. So I had like a huge amount of support there. But understanding the psychology is like the biggest game changer when it comes to training, because he had a resource guarding. He was it was quite intense as a 3-month-old
Yep.
puppy, and understanding what his mindset was around that completely shifted everything. And I understand how so many people that just don't know any different would assume he's, being bad or spiteful or mean, or, all of those terms that can really, set you back in terms of your training, because you've already labeled this dog
That's
and not
right.
understood what the actual psychology was behind that behavior. So you're
And
not coming at it with the right approach. You're not coming at it with compassion or with the right understanding or how to approach it.
Yeah.
So that was huge with him. He's so much better now.
Yeah.
Like dramatically better.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Yeah.
When you use words like that, or, so people that have had, they might have had a dog 10 years ago or whatever, when you're using words like that to describe your dog's behavior, it just has such an impact on your view of the dog and your relationship with the dog. You're going to get angry at them.
Yeah.
You're going to be frustrated.
And hopeless. Like if you've told yourself my dog is a lost cause, what's the point of trying? Like if you've told yourself that, and so people just give up without even doing anything because you've talked yourself out of it before even trying.
And unfortunately, some dog trainers are saying it. So some dog trainers are the ones that are saying, if you've got a 3-month-old Groodle that's resource guarding, you're in big trouble. Yeah. You need to do, you need to buy all this training. You need to do and really freaking people out and like using a lot of fear and stress to try and get people to engage in training.
Absolutely.
Which it really impacts the relationship that the owner has with the dog.
And it's so demotivating. Like, that's not motivation.
So
like that's not inspiring somebody to change. Like if I heard of a 3-month-old Groodle who's resource guarding, in my head I'm going to be like, well, we need to do something about that like now. But saying like freaking somebody out about it is not going to be motivating for somebody to do something about it. You've really got to, talk to them about, but what if in a month's time it looks like this? If you do this work in a month's time, it looks like this. Would you do the work? Like, would you put in hours? Because most people are like, of course, like if that's the end result, then definitely. One of the first activities when people sign up for the academy is a goal setting video, and we talk a lot about having your, because as I said, everybody comes in with their pie in the sky goals. And so we talk about like having a big goal, like it might be, I just want to be able to walk my dog down the street without them barking at lunging every time they see something going past. And so we're like, great, that's your big goal. Then we start breaking it down. So we go, all right, that's your big goal. Why do you want to do that? What will it make? How will it change your life? How will it change your dog's life? How will that feel when you've got that? And then what are you going to do this week? And we break it down into sort of steps. And then what are you going to do this week and today that doesn't necessarily solve that problem yet, but gets you a step closer? Because for most people, they are thinking about that and they're trying to like, it's amazing because I can see from the academy who watches what videos when. And it's funny because oftentimes people who have a dog like that will come in and I see them go straight to like phase 4. And, they're watching the phase 4 videos because they're like, I know my problem's there. Can I just quickly duck in? Quickly. And so I see them do that. But then it's very interesting because then once they watch that, it's like, they're like, oh, I don't have the tools necessary to do that now, like I don't have the language necessary to do that yet. And so then they start to go back and see how they need to do these step by step. And that doesn't mean it takes a long time. It just means that it's more efficient. We're going to get there much quicker. There's a great a horsemanship quote that's something like, take the time it takes and slow down to go faster, essentially. And that's just so important. Like if you can just slow down, take a step back. And I think people feel like a failure if they have to work on sit, or work on drop and things like that, because that's the foundation. But then if you get that right, you accelerate the entire process.
Well, it's like learning a language. You start with learning hello, how are you, like the basics of the vocabulary. It's the same thing with dogs. Like you're creating that vocabulary together.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you can't just go from 0 to 100. They're
Yeah.
not going to know what you're
And
talking
on the
about.
labels too, you know,
Yeah.
like so many people call their dog stupid or dumb or whatever it might be. Like if you see somebody, oh, my dog can't do that, my dog's dumb. Like how many times do I sit with my dogs at a cafe? And I was like, there's no way my dog can do that. My dog's too stupid. I'm like, he's literally lying down. Like, does your dog not know how to lie down? Like, is that not a really good capability for them? Like, you know, like they can do it. And so, yeah, so I think that that's a huge thing that people put on their dogs too is, you know, and they're not communicating to them properly. They're not dumb.
Yeah, that's it. The thought I just had is that is actually sad that what that really probably says is that I haven't figured out how to communicate with my dog. And so we don't communicate. So I don't know what they know and they don't know what I know.
So I'm just going to put my hands up and be like, they don't know anything.
Yeah. It must be that the dog is stupid, but really there's a breakdown in communication, and that's sad because that's a huge impact on your human animal bond.
Absolutely. And it really limits you know, what you will even try. And I think that's the biggest thing is that if you put those labels on them and then you see somebody, a local trainer or somebody online or whatever, who says they have a solution for you, you kind of automatically block it because you're thinking in your head, well, that's great for their dog, but my dog won't do that. You know, my dog's not capable of that. So yeah, I think that's huge.
When we look at the research around pet ownership, there's so many benefits to humans to be around dogs, but those benefits aren't possible if you're not getting them. If you're arguing with your dog all the time, you're frustrated at them, you're angry because they've ripped your drywall out, you know, you get stressed every time you're walking them. They're reactive, so you actually can't. So the social lubricant effect of going out and walking your dog and then you run into other people and have a chat and someone says hello and all that sort of stuff. Those are all all your cardiovascular health, all those things are all impacted by that. That's what the research has shown for a long time. We all know that. But you're not getting that. If you're going for a walk every time and you're stressed out of your mind and your dog's going off at everything, like you're not getting a social lubricant effect. You're getting
everyone hates you effect.
Everyone hates you and you're embarrassed and you're gonna, and then imagine your dog who's now, already dysregulated, but now you're dysregulating because you're out in this stressful situation and things like that. It's only going to dysregulate the dog further. And there's no chance for anyone to calm down and come back.
Seeing, especially on social media, everybody's quotes about like, how great a dog's for our lifestyle and my dog is my relaxation and pat a dog for 5 seconds a day or blah, blah, blah. And I mean, fantastic. I absolutely feel like I get all those benefits from my dogs. But from my point of view, like, majority of people I come into contact with who are dog owners are not really getting that. They're getting frustration, they're getting stress, anxiety, all of that, because it's really difficult for them to own a dog. It's really difficult for them to do anything with their dog. And guilt, like huge amounts of guilt because they don't, they know what their dog needs. They know their dog needs to be walked, but the thought of taking them for a walk is just terrifying for some people. And inconvenient. Like they have to get up at, 4 a.m. because they don't want to see other people or whatever it might be. And so that makes everything 10 times harder for them.
Yeah, and then it just gets worse and worse.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So when we look at Heidi, online dog training, I know we get a lot of people that ask us like, how are you training the dogs online? And you've already like hit the nail on the head, which is we're training the handlers. So especially, what we're doing as well, like I don't need to spend that much time on the dog. I need a lot of time with the human. That's the person who's training the dog. So we're equipping you with the skills that you need, and then we, help and support them to do that. So how did you start online dog training?
So
because it's been a while.
It has been a while. So it was when my son was born, which was 2018. So essentially before that, I was doing private lessons, board and trains, group classes, all in-person training. And because I had the time to be able to do all of those things, my life was pretty much just work, dogs, and that was it.
Yeah.
And so then I had my babies. And we also did fertility treatment. So it was like a long period of time where I couldn't do all of those sorts of things, or I didn't feel up to doing all of those sorts of things.
Because that stuff knocks you around,
Oh,
hey?
man. Yeah, it really does. Yeah, it's a roller coaster. And so then my second child was born in 2018, and I'd already filmed and recorded a lot of online content because a lot of my clients that I'd been working with previously had asked questions or needed help or whatever, and I'd sort of been referring them out. They weren't really getting help that they wanted or needed, and so I was like, I'll just start out with this. And then after that, I was like talking to people at the park, because I'd always be going to the playground with the kids and the dogs would just chill out on the side, and then we'd go for a walk and they'd walk around off lead, or I'd be meeting mum's group at a cafe and I just have the dogs with me. I was like, where is everybody else's dogs? Like, why am I the only one here with dogs? What is going on? And and I knew a lot of these people had dogs, like, and they couldn't bring them. Like, they were like, there's no way I could handle having my kid and my dog here. I can't do it. And then they can't get to group classes because, like, trying to wrangle everybody at group classes was going to be too difficult, or they didn't want to give up their Sundays because, they wanted to do other things, and night times are not appropriate. All of that sort of stuff was getting in their way. And then private lessons were way out of the budget, like, for a lot of people, it's just not achievable to be able to do enough private lessons to get the results that they wanted to get. And so then I was like, all right, we need to do something about this. The other thing was, for me, I was like, I haven't been to a group class pretty much since my son was born and he's 4, because I just can't, it's just too crazy to do that. I've got so much going on with work and everything else. And I thought, there's a lot of people like me who just, like, it's not because I'm a dog trainer or because I'm the only one who's busy. Like, people who don't have kids or whatever still got lots of stuff to do and lots of things on and just don't want to do that sort of thing. And so then I was like, right, we need to do this. So I launched that a few months later, Dogmanship Training Academy. And it was kind of, at the time, because this was way pre-COVID, it was very uncommon. Like, I was getting so many people like, how is that even possible? Like, that's ridiculous. But I knew that it could be done. And also I knew that a lot of times when I'm going to private lessons, I'm literally just saying the same thing on repeat. Like, I may as well be a CD summertime. So
it's a lot of talking and communicating anyway.
Like, they can get this somewhere. Like, they don't need me there to learn this. And so then we did that, and it kind of was a bit of an experiment because everyone was questioning me, and I was just, oh, this is gonna be fine. And so so did it, and it was awesome. So about 3 months in, I just went like, this is amazing. Everybody was chatting to each other. I could give feedback so easily. One of the biggest things people were saying was, I love being able to watch the videos on repeat. Because if you're in a class or if you're in a private lesson and then your dog barks, you turn around and just miss everything that just happened. And so you can't focus. So being able to watch things on repeat is really helpful. Being able to watch things whenever they want. Like, some people are shift workers, and so it's just, like, not practical for them to be able to do things at the normal time that other people would have classes. And so they would watch them, on the way to work or at lunchtime or whatever, and then apply it when they got home. So it just meant that they could get it when they needed it, and in bite-sized chunks. All the videos are quite easy to digest before you take action, and without fluff. Like, it wasn't too, I don't go too much into anything. So we've got the phases. We've also got a challenges section, which has heaps of videos on, like, trick training or other activities you can try, and things like that, so that if you go through the phases and then you're like, hey, I want to learn more about this topic, or I want to know something and do something else, you've got extra stuff. But if you just want to solve a problem, you get in and you just go through the phases. You don't have to do anything else. So without all of that
so cool.
stuff, and so after 3 months, somebody said, I love having a dog trainer in my pocket. And I was like, that's exactly what it is. Like, it's like having somebody that you can post questions anytime. People will, when you start training, or anytime you've got a dog, like, or something that you have to care for, you have questions, because it's like, at night and you're like, why is he doing that? Like, why is he doing this behavior? What's going on? But they could just post that question and get an answer. So you don't have to wait till the next lesson or next week or pay extra or anything like that to get the support. So that was really huge. So then once that sort of started working, and I realized that this is actually getting people results, everybody's loving it, it was great, then it just really took off from there.
So good.
Yeah.
So Heidi, can you tell us like who your dogs are? Because you've got
I've got two. So I've got
two at the moment.
Snickers, the Labradoodle, who is 14. So Snickers is the dog that just like, I would not be who I am without Snickers. He really just changed my whole life. So before I became a dog trainer, I studied animal science for a year and hated it. Studied teaching for 2 years and then dropped out. And then started dog training and realized that, hang on a minute, I get to combine animals and teaching. This is awesome. And so that's what I wanted to do. And so then from then it just took off, and it was really getting him that sort of started that.
Because you did dances with dogs and stuff, didn't you?
Yeah. So when he was younger, we'd compete. He's just taught me so much. So he started with him, then got Bailey. Fortunately, Bailey we lost 4 years ago now. And then Savvy came along, who was a foster dog who ended up staying. And so I've got Savvy, who's a Rottweiler, and she's just turned 8.
She 8 already. Far out.
I've got 2 seniors and I'm not happy about it. Yeah, so 14 and 8 both have some health issues, so I'm not doing heaps with them at the moment, which, I mean, for this stage of my life isn't so bad because it means I can really focus on everybody else's dogs for a while, which is nice. But yeah, so that's where we're
So how old was... So Savvy was 4 when Bailey passed away.
Yeah,
four-ish?
yeah, about that.
I remember seeing, like on your socials, seeing so many at that time in your life, like, you know how you're talking about like going to cafes and stuff like that, where you'd have like these 3 large breed dogs walking, like loose lead walking beside a pram with kids, and like they were constantly like, there's videos and photos of Heidi's dogs just doing exactly what she's talking about, just absolutely. Then exactly how we started this conversation, just talking about those dogs were so included in life, like they were just so much a part, and they, you know, obviously Snickers and Savvy still are so much a part of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. We traveled Australia for a year.
I was gonna say, you guys traveled as well.
Yeah, I mean, they do like pretty much everything with us, and that's not, you know, Snickers is very much a kind of dog who will just like be pretty much okay with everything. We did a lot of the right things when he was a pup, and, you know, like, I think it's partly just who he is, but he just loves everything, everyone. Not like a bomb could go off and he'd be like, oh yeah, cool, whatever, you know, problems. And so he's very relaxed about those sorts of things. Savvy, on the other hand, we got Savvy at about 5 months oldish, and she was a nervous Nelly from the get-go. I think it's probably, well, it's definitely a lot to do with what happened in her puppyhood, but also I think it may just be a bit of who she is as well.
Was she a board and train for you initially? Were you helping someone with her? Or?
She was. I went to somebody's house for a private lesson that was more of an assessment because essentially
she was a handful.
Yeah, and we'll know her. Her daughter had left her with this puppy, and she was an older lady who had older Rottweilers, and the older Rottweilers were not impressed with Savvy being there and were trying to attack her all the time.
Oh, that's stressful.
And so she was quite stressed and anxious, and the lady was stressed and anxious. And so then we sat down and talked about, because she was like, how am I going to fix this? And I was like, I don't know if this is going to be a safely managed environment, given that it's just you. And she was an elderly lady with 3 dogs that would have been like probably over 120 kilos all up with the adult dogs alone. I was like, maybe this isn't ideal right now. And she didn't even really want this puppy, you know, or the dog had just been sort of dumped on her. And so then I said, I can foster her and find a home for you if you like, that would be more suitable. And she was really relieved. And so we did that. And then we fell in love with her. And so, well, when it was funny because it was like my second day of being self-employed. So, like started my business, second day on the job, and I bring home this dog, and my husband's like, "Are you kidding me? Like, is right now?" And it was so funny because she was so car sick. She used to absolutely hate the car. And she was so car sick that when she got home, we were both covered in spew. So I'm standing there and he gets home.
God.
I'm in my towel with this puppy in my hands, like, hi.
Business is going well.
Yeah. So you know that money I made, well, that's gone. So that was a good start. But yeah,
so good.
we fostered a lot of dogs, but yeah, for some reason, she just stuck. But I was going through a bit of a tough time again with the fertility stuff and everything, and so I think we kind of bonded quite closely because of that. And I think that me going through that did impact her somewhat too, because she wasn't the most confident or a sort of outgoing pup, and she's still not. But she was very in tune from me from the get-go, and I was very in tune with her from the get-go, and I think that we kind of both needed each other at that point, and so she sort of stuck. So yeah,
that's so special.
yeah, she's
a lucky girl.
She's beautiful.
On the right
and
hand.
I know it's sad to talk about Bailey, but I think it's worth mentioning as well that when I think he was 7, wasn't he? Was he 7?
Yes.
When
he passed 7. Away? Yeah. So he was just the most lovable goofball. Like, he really taught me a lot about.
It was a Goldie, wasn't he?
Golden Retriever. Just accepting, like, this is who they are. Because Snickers was quite, like, if Snickers was a person, he'd be a real overachiever. Like, he's real. He's really
the golden child.
Yeah, and he's really like, if I was training, he would be like, game on, what are we doing next? Come on, let's go. Next thing, like, really keen to do it. And Bailey was lovable, and like, he would do something if you asked him to, but like trick training and stuff, he was like, yeah, right, we'll give it a crack, like, no. And he'd do like 1 or 2, and he's like, can we nap? Like, are we done? What's going on here?
I'm knackered.
And so he kind of taught me a lot of just about finding the right dog for the right job, like, and he was, so we did a little bit of work visiting nursing homes with him and things like that, because that was his jam, like, he didn't want to be doing performances. He wanted to just be going around and loving, and he had like this special knack for just sort of seeking out people who needed him. Like, I remember being in this big group setting, and there were all these people around us, and he like weaved through people and beeline to this person, which is unlike Bailey because he doesn't go very fast many places. And so he beelined for this lady, and she just like started crying and like snuggling into him, and he just put his feet up on her. Like, he just knew, like, he was very aware of where he was needed and wanted, and that was him. Whereas Snickers was like, right, who's got something for me to do? What are we doing next? And like, just different personalities. And Savvy, again, like, I mean, I love her to death, but a lot of my job at the moment is working with dogs with some sort of aggression issue, and that's very difficult for Savvy. Like, it's draining for Savvy to do anything like that, and so she's not ideal for that job. And so I think it's like Bailey really helped me learn that you can't force personality, like, they are who they are, and you can teach behaviors and you can work on problems and things like that, but what they love is what they love.
When they have such a full life, like, it's sad because he got sick and he was lost way too early, but he had such a full life. And I just want to point to that for anyone that's listening who's thinking, because what I'm coming across sometimes is people that aren't ready. They're in that sort of pre-contemplative stage where they're not ready to change and they're not ready to address their dog's stuff. Because they've built their life around it.
Yeah.
So they have built ways to accommodate for the dog's issues that they've got. And they might be thinking, yeah, I don't need to walk my dog though because I just do food puzzles for enrichment and play with the ball. Or, yeah, it's okay because, it's reactive and blah, 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 blah. But I just walk at 4 a.m. Or, oh, yeah, they are a bit funny about, like, they won't get off the couch when I tell them to get off the couch. Or, oh, yeah, they just live outside now because of this. Or, oh, they live inside and I basically just do whatever my cavoodle tells me to do because it just barks at me incessantly until I do it or until I let it do whatever it's trying to do. I do pre-course consults, and I do sometimes get that come across these people who just, even though, you know, we've got a lot of tools and skills to help address that stuff, they're just not ready, because I think that the human animal bond that they've developed with their dogs is very much it's a bit of an anxious attachment where it's like there's a bit of a codependency where it's like, yeah, but I just want the dog to like me.
Yes.
And I don't want to upset the dog, and I don't want, you know, because I love it and I want it to love me.
Yes.
But to those people, I really want to point out that when you, like Heidi has talked about, when you address these things and you work with your dogs on this stuff, A, it's not even that difficult. B, the freedom that your dog gets, they're not going to live forever. They're not going to live forever.
And you know, very quickly.
And we've got such a skew with version of what love is when it comes to our dogs.
Yes.
Because if we had a human in our home treating us like that, we would say that is a toxic relationship. Like, get out. You know, there's something that has to give here. But with our dogs, we see that as love, and that's something that needs to shift. Like, we don't really understand that a lot of the people are living with dogs who are, what if it was a human we would consider abusive, you know, like we would consider, and both ways, like, you know, like vice versa, without intending to, with the best intentions, people can be inadvertently abusing their dogs, you know, like with food and with all this other stuff, you know, there's a lot of that happening. And so I think rethinking what love for our dogs really means and what they value is really important in that situation too. But yeah, like Bailey was so sudden, like, but Bailey had, it could have been a heart attack or a brain aneurysm, so quick, whatever it was like a few seconds. But we were going to my parents' house to pick up their dog and go for a big run in like the forest where he loves. And so he was like literally running around like an absolute goofball with his mates and, you know, having a great old time, and then bang, gone, right? And
that's amazing.
And so it was like a shock, but at the same time, like, if you've got to go, you know, like, if you're going, that's the way to do it, you know, like
that's how I want to die.
Yeah, that's right. He was so happy, and he had such a great life up to that point. We used to see him, we had like a deck that kind of looked out over the forest, and he'd literally just sit out like he's meditating in the sunshine in the morning, just looking out over the deck, these eyes half closed, like he was just happy and content. And so, I mean, it was awful for us to go through that, but for him, like, he was happy, you know, and
lived life to the fullest right until the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what you want for them.
That Sonny, who's my 11.5-year-old lab, I'm more so conscious with him because he's getting older. But ever since he was really young, I have just treasured every single day. He's you know, people will talk about their life dog, their journey dog, that sort of thing. Like, so what Heidi's saying about Snickers, that's Sonny for me.
Yeah,
big time. Turned my life completely around and like continues to contribute to that. And so I treasure, you know, and I always take the time every single day to make sure that the dogs have had their enrichment, they've had their attention, like he's had his play, he's had a bum scratch, you know, he's had all those things. Because I really do, and you know, it's getting a more valid thought as he gets older, but I really do think every day when I like leave for work, or every day when I put them to bed, I think if this was his last day, it would have been a good day.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Like there was no question in his mind.
Sometimes at night I get into bed and I say to my husband, I didn't do enough with Snickers today, because it's like, he's so old now. And I mean, this dog has come back from death multiple times, so I think he's going to fight for a bit longer. But I'm really conscious of that now. And, you know, like you rethink things like, did I do enough today? Does he know I like him? Does he know I love him that much? Does he know how special he is? You know, all of that sort of stuff. But even things like, I mean, right now we live like 700 meters from the beach, but he can't really walk that far. So we drive him down to the beach and we carry him out of the car, and he has his little wander around the beach. He falls over a few times, but he's happy about it. He just gets up and keeps trundling along, and he goes and stands in the water and just soaks for a while and has a look around, and he just loves it. But sometimes I can get in that thing of I'm looking at my phone, or I'm on a call to somebody, or I'm distracted watching these people do the wrong thing with their dog, or like something like that, and then and I have to be like, just look at him and remember him and like make eye contact with him, and you see him, like he's one of those dogs where you can really see the shift as soon as you make eye contact. Like he'll look at you and you look at him and you just see him like perk up, like, hey, look at me, like she noticed me. And so that sort of thing, those are the things that you really treasure. But we wouldn't have that if he was frustrating, like if it was hard to live with him, then it wouldn't be like that. And now we joke around because we're like, Savvy has rules and boundaries and things. Snickers just does what he wants now. Like he's and he knows that he's like, so
there's a bit of that going on here too.
And because he can't really hear, and so but he can a little bit, and now we're starting to be like, pretty sure I heard that, but he's just like,
exact same thing's going on here.
But he's earned that, like he's been a great dog his whole life. So, he's going to be a bit cheeky now. Let him get away with it.
Especially when, like you are the same, Heidi, when you've built a career, I've built a career in 2 businesses from that dog, and I make sure I thank him every day.
That's exactly right. I know, even like when we traveled Australia, we took both of them with us, but like, some people were saying, like, are you sure you want to take the dogs? It might be a bit harder, like you've got to find dog-friendly parks and things like that. But I mean, like that my whole life would not be possible without this dog. Like nothing I have would be here. My kids, my family, like nothing I have would be there without him. And so like it's not optional, like he's there. He's a permanent fixture. And so, I definitely think it's a different when you train a dog and when you really develop the language and really develop that communication system with them, where you can, I mean, it starts out with just being like, I know they're going to get up out of a sit. I know they're about to do this behavior. I know that they're seeking a reward. Like it starts out like that, but it ends up being like, I know something's a bit off today, or I know that that bothers them, or they didn't really like that touching me there that much, or they were flinched then, or whatever it might be. And you start getting more and more receptive to them over time. But a lot of people miss out on that because you haven't started with the basic, I know I can see we're about to get up out of a sit sort of thing. So I think that it definitely feeds into it.
So I have a question. Sorry.
No, go, Max.
I was just going to ask, with Savvy and then Snickers, what, in terms of online dog training, you said Savvy was a little bit more anxious from the start. With people that have an anxious dog or something, when's the line with getting someone in to see a dog in person?
Yeah, good question.
What works
so
with
two things that I don't do online training for, and the 2 things are aggression towards humans and aggression towards dogs who live within the same household, so dogs who live together, purely because I mean the process of training wouldn't be that different. Like we do very similar things regardless, but the management level that you need in that circumstance to keep everybody safe and seeing the layout of your house, like put a gate here, put a crate here, put this there, what equipment, how do you what's going to suit this dog? Is this person scared of their dog? Because that's a huge thing. That's a really difficult thing to deal with. Which I find out of all aggression cases, the hardest thing to deal with is once the owner is afraid of their dog. That's really the challenging one to deal with. And so those are the 2 things I don't deal with. So anxiety, for most dogs, I find is for a lot of dogs, it's a symptom of other things that are going on in their life. And of course, there are the outliers who legitimately need medication or, whatever it might be. But for a lot of dogs, they're living in an anxious state because of the environment and their relationship with their people in their environment. And so really what we talk about is let's start out, because we don't know if that's the case until we address that, right? So we start by working on those things first, and working on relationship and leadership and impulse control and emotional regulation and all of that sort of stuff first of all, because often when we get there, the anxiety isn't really a big deal anymore. Or oftentimes people think their dog is anxious, but their dog is just performing a learnt behavior. Like, for example, they've got a puppy, her 8 weeks old, was banging on the door to come in and barking at the door. And then they were like, oh, a little puppy, come inside. And it was so cute. And, all of that. He just wants to be with me. And so they let him in. And then it just gets worse and worse and worse. And then they start going, hang on a minute. Now the dog's actually eating my door.
It's out of control.
The dog is now like 6 months old. Yeah, exactly. But now the dog's 6 months old. So then they go, I'm just going to ignore him. I'm not letting him in. I'm ignoring him, putting my foot down, and then the dog goes, oh, well, that didn't work. I'm going to escalate it. And so they go, all right, well, I'm going to go harder, and I'm going to bark, and I'm going to, try.
Maybe you can't hear me.
Because they're just problem solving. Yeah, they're problem solving. Your dog's actually a genius, not an idiot. Like they're problem solving, trying to figure out, is there a way in? And so then the owner's like, whoa, we better let them in. We're making it worse. And so then they get let in on that escalated level, and then it just gets worse and worse. And so then they call me and say, my dog's got separation anxiety. And then we actually look at it and we're like, no, your dog has just learned that this works, right? And that doesn't mean that it's not stressful for the dog, but it's not separation anxiety. It's a learned behavior. So things like that, oftentimes we see that anxiety has been mislabeled, and it is actually just something else going on.
With humans as well.
It's like, yeah, absolutely. And or it's like, my dog is really, when he sees another dog on walks, he's barking and lunging because he's scared of dogs and, whatever else it might be. And oftentimes they might be, but the thing we need to do about that is increase our language and leadership, mollycoddling that is not going to help, so we need to work on those things to get there. So oftentimes I think it's just our perception of it that needs to shift, and then the way that we will handle it will shift, because we can see what it is for what it is. So yeah, definitely.
So when we do our online stuff, that was a reaction to COVID, when I was like, oh my God. I was like, holy heck.
I was like, yes, set up for this.
Yeah, far out, man. I was like, Heidi's got all the answers. We're going online.
Psychic, I'm telling you.
So when we went online, and I made a dog training video library, which sounds like it's similar to what, you've got a library as well. So, but mine's pretty basic, but it's got, our training activities in it. And then I got a few extra things in there as well, helpful things and that sort of stuff. What we're training is quite limited, so it's not fully extensive. Just covers our manners and obedience skills, and then helpful hints for living with dogs, because of what you're describing, where people just put up with stuff because they don't know what to do. But what we do during the course is we get people, when they register for our courses, they get access to that library. So even if their course is in 3 months' time or whatever, so they can start training. I have found that to be so helpful. And I sort of thought, oh yeah, we'll just give people access to it and, see what happens. But oh my goodness, people watching the videos and practicing, by the time they get to their course, I'm like, are you already a dog trainer? What is happening? And they're like, I've just been watching the videos. And I was like, the ones I made?
What?
Yeah. When I was having a straight up meltdown about COVID, and I just was lucky enough that I had a 5-month-old puppy at the time, so I could do puppy stuff as well. Because what was also really hard, Heidi, was that my dog's already bloody trained. Yeah. So I'm trying to make training videos with these dogs that are already trained. And I was like, you idiots are useless.
Yeah, that's right. Naughty, damn it.
Yeah. God damn it.
Yeah.
But I was lucky I had a puppy, so she was only just learning stuff, But man, it is unreal. And I saw that when we did the first year, because I was like, oh, we're just doing this until COVID goes away. Throughout that first year, so the other thing that happened when we do the courses, so now instead of we used to run the day and we've got so much theory, dog training theory and animal assisted therapist handler theory. There's so much theory. And we'd have the dogs just sitting with people all day, which, you know, it's exhausting for the dogs. So then the other thing has happened, like we try and give people dog training feedback. Like when you do it in person, it's pretty hard for people to understand what you see.
Yeah.
What we do now is people video themselves doing their 1 or 2 activities that they're doing for that week. And then we still watch them in a group setting.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, pause, rewind, play, pause, rewind, play, pause, rewind. See that? There. And I like, sometimes I think it's a bit overwhelming for people because I'm straight up dissecting
the whole thing. Yeah.
The whole thing. And they're like, look, my dog sat. They're like really excited. And I'm like, that is great. Here is everything that was wrong.
Meanwhile,
to make it better, do this, and I'm breaking it down because it's a video and I can. But so can they. So they can actually see themselves and they can watch it back. And we do self-evaluation.
Sorry, it's interesting you say that because people in the academy, because we've got our community as well, and oftentimes they'll say, I'm struggling with this. I'll be like, can you just grab a video, just a couple of minutes so I can see exactly what's going on? And before, when they post the video, they'll be like, here's the video, but I actually think I know what I'm doing now. they correct it themselves because they can see it when they look back at it.
So good. It's so good.
And,
so we've
included.
Horse
riders do that all the time.
I know. That's what I say to people.
That's where I got the idea from.
So when I did my supervisor training, so this is 5 years ago, as a psychologist, board approved supervisor, they put a big focus on self-evaluation and like being able to evaluate yourself. And the guy who's running it is Dr. Aaron Frost, who's amazing. But he was like, who's got a hobby? And I'm like, yeah, I ride horses. And he's like, you know, do you video it? And I'm like, all the time, constantly. That's all we do is video. And I've got Brumbies as well. And so
people got mirrors up in their arenas.
People got mirrors up in the arenas. There's that many gadgets and devices you can buy as horse riders. You can get a microphone, in-ear thing, and your coach is on the ground in a microphone talking to you while you're on your horse over there, giving you like the biomechanical, most finite, like changes that you need to make to what you're doing. Working with wild horses, I've videoed so much stuff because it's so important that I'm getting better at that so I don't die. And so when I was talking about that supervisor thing, Aaron was making a huge deal about like self-evaluation, video it, watch it back, because they did that as a part of our assessment to be supervisors. We had to video a supervision session, but instead of just submitting it, you had to evaluate yourself and like you had to mark it.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
And I was like, this is so useful for me to actually be forced to look at myself in this context. I do it all the time with the horses, but I hadn't generalized it. So our course is constant. So every training activity they do, they've got a worksheet and they have to watch the video back and self-evaluate it. And that's in one section of the worksheet. And then we give trainer feedback and they put that in the second part of the worksheet of like what they've understood about that. And we record everything as well. But our final assessment, their obedience and manners assessment, they fill in a self-evaluation sheet that goes in with like they mark their videos and send it in with them. And people are like, this sucks.
You get like, how many watch yourself, don't you? Like, oh my God, I'm a terrible dog trainer when you look back.
It can be uncomfortable.
Why did I do that? When I first started videoing for the academy, like the first few videos, I was like, stop. All right, say that differently. Start. Oh, damn, say that differently. You know, like I was just constantly, and then I was like, hang on a minute. I know what I'm talking about. Just talk as if you're talking like somebody's there. Like, and when I stopped talking to the camera and talked to, you know, as if I was talking to a client, it all just came out normal. But you do, when you look back at yourself, you're like, oh my goodness, what am I doing there? What am I doing with my hand? Why do I stand like that? You know, all of this stuff. Yeah, you really
you'll appreciate, Heidi. I was making videos I was worming the horses the other day, and my partner's just getting into horses, and so we've been making videos like when he tries to do things, and so he can watch it back and exactly what we're talking about. I literally do it every day. Like it's I'm not making this up. I actually do it all the time. I've got albums in my phone of like the various horse trainers that I work with where I video things or get them to video things in my lessons, and I put them in the album on my phone so I can go back and watch it, so I can learn from it. And I was like trying to worm Thunderstorm, this little foal, and my partner had tried first and sort of stuffed around a bit. So now this Thunderstorm's fixed, because he'll put the wormer in his mouth like to play with it. But, you know, then he's gotten a bit excited, and I'm like, we had to do it again. So I was like, I'll just do it this time. Like, you know, just shot it straight through his mouth, straight out into the paddock. And I was like, did that just go out of his mouth? And I had the video, and you can watch back on the video, because I'm like, did it go in his mouth or did it go not in his mouth? Like, I didn't feel enough resistance. Like, did it go out? But I couldn't see it on the ground anywhere. And I was like, what has happened here? I look like an idiot here. And then, I looked back on the video, and you can see in the video, like, you can see the wormer just flying across the paddock. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, so he's not wormed. So he has now been not wormed twice this morning, so we might leave it for today.
Good.
And I might do a fecal egg count, because I don't know how much worm has been in his mouth. So, damn it. So I have, I do have sympathy for people.
Self-motivation. Like, that's the thing though with online training, is that you don't have somebody there kicking your butt. You know, you have to be self-motivated enough to do it, which I think that's a lot of the people who come to me are like, this is like it, you know, we've got to do something. And so that's their motivation. I find that people who have puppies or, you know, things where there's not a problem per se yet, that you know, that staying self-motivated is much more difficult, because you sort of think, oh, of course he's going to go into this perfect little angel, and you don't sort of foresee any issues. But yeah, so I think that's probably one of the bigger challenges with online training, is keeping people motivated.
I struggle with that too, though. Like, as a human being, I struggle with that. So, you know, like, we've kept our courses scheduled, so you actually are logging in, and you've got this just live thing happening, and we're looking at the videos and stuff, because it gives people a deadline and a due date and things like that, and they do stay on track with that. Yeah,
and I think for you too, part of their motivation is like, I want to do this for a career. I want a therapy dog. Yeah, I want, like, there's a very specific, tangible kind of outcome for them.
There is.
And especially when it is your career, you know, like, it's a big deal. Yeah.
Not a hobby.
No, that's exactly right. And not just so, you know, if somebody doesn't do something in my group, nobody is going to know. Like, their neighbors don't know, their mum doesn't know, you know, nobody knows about it. They can just secretly be like, oh, I didn't even try, I'm just going to hide over here. And nobody will know. So, like, it's easy to just not do anything. So having that self-motivation is really important, which I think is why I like the online training, because I'm very self-motivated like that. Like, if there's something I want to learn, I will do it myself. And, you know, I think that's part and parcel of being a business owner as well. So I think I sort of attract people like that anyway, which has been really interesting, because I haven't really had to, like, we've got over 300 people in the Facebook, like the Academy group. And so having that many people, you would think there'd be a few like blowouts with people, or, you know, negative things happen. You know, somebody's mean to somebody, or, you know, whatever. And I've not really had that ever yet. And I know. And I think really that's purely, I mean, it's partly because people get worded up before they join, you know, like, this is the expectation, and we're kind to each other and all of that sort of stuff. But also, I've just been lucky in attracting that kind of person, I think, into the program, because people who are generally self-motivated and are wanting to do things and change their life, and, you know, like, I'm big on personal development and things like that as well. And I think those sorts of people see my program, be like, that's something I can do. And so they're sort of in the right mindset by the time they get in. So I've been really lucky.
They're open to learning.
Yeah, I just love the people that I get to work with. Like, so much great feedback, and they're awesome.
Yeah. A lot of groups have those rules before you join, though, but you still see, you know, group, you know, vigilantes or whoever in there, and they're just monsters.
Yeah, that's
so right. I think that's a lot to do with you as well, Heidi, that, like, your disposition and things like that. Because when people are watching your videos, you're actually modeling, like, a lot of that stuff, you know. So you're really modeling, like, this cool, calm, collected, like, everything's cool, man. Like, no.
Yes, and I think the no judgment. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm not judging, like, how many
It's a safe
people or
space.
how many trainers on Instagram or whatever are like, if you're saying your puppy is, bad because of COVID, you were lazy and you should have done this, you should have done that. Like,
Yeah.
these are people who are going through COVID. Like, cut them some slack, for God's sake.
Leave them
Like, it's
alone,
not
man.
like yeah, exactly. And like, it's not motivating. Nobody's like, oh, I want to work with that trainer because he just called me lazy. You're like, that's not going to work. And so, like, it's not motivating and it's not kind. And like, I
But
just
proper
always think
learning means you have to really reflect on what you've been doing, differently to what you should probably be doing with your dog. And if you're getting people coming at you, you're going to shut down. You're going to get defensive.
And I
You're not
think
going to
that's
learn anything.
a big skill of a dog, like being a good dog trainer, is being able to deliver the hard truth nicely, like in a kind way, without being judgmental about it. That's really hard because you do sometimes have to be like, well, yeah, this is kind of your fault that this is happening. But it's not because you were awful, and it's not because you're a terrible person. Everybody just did the best with what you had at the time, and now you know better, so let's do better and we move on. Like, it's not a judgment on you. It's this is an opportunity to learn something new.
I think that's one of the things we've found tricky with going online is less opportunities to sort of smooth that over. I think, like, we've had, and because we're in a group setting as well, like, sometimes we do come across handlers that they're a long way from getting to where they need to be. And sometimes we have handlers that think that they already know, everything, when, their dog can already sit and drop and do a backflip or whatever. And I'm like, that's awesome. And we try to be flexible with our training methods as well, where I go, like, if you bring me an already trained dog, I don't really need you to untrain it and retrain it my way. We're going to work with it with what you've got. And then we add in, like, all the things that I know are going to be clinically relevant. So
we'll have to meet the criteria still.
We still need you to not need to say stay to your dog when you put it in a sit or a drop, because in a clinical setting, it's actually rupturing of relationship with your participant or client, because you've just told them that you're forcing the dog to interact with them, and that it's rupturing. Like, it just causes problems. So drop means drop until I tell you to move, and sit means sit until I tell you to move. And it's easy. But some people, if they already sort of, they've got their drop and their sit already and that sort of stuff, and they're reluctant to take on some of that language and improved communication stuff that we do.
Yes, absolutely.
And then they get down the track to the more difficult activities and the manners and stuff, and it falls apart. Like, exactly what you've described. Like, I see that with the handlers that aren't ready for, to get a bit more creative with what they're already doing and try and add in some extra. Like, I will work, I'm a magician problem solver. Like, I will work with them and figure out what will work. Train the dog in front of you, always. Like, I will work with that handler and that dog for that workplace at this time in their life and this and that. Like, every team gets treated as an individual for the range of whatever their variance of their circumstances is. But the ones that think, I'm just not going to actually take any of this on board and I'm just going to keep doing what I was doing, they fall apart really quickly.
I often get people come into the academy and be like, I know that it says in the intro that I should start from the start, even no matter what I've done, but my dog knows how to sit and drop. Can I just skip through? And it's always that, first of all, that question of, oh, that's great, they can sit. Could they sit if you threw a ball? Could they sit if there was another dog? Could they sit if somebody came to your front door? Could they sit there? And all, like, no, like, it's probably like 1% of people who have a dog over 6 months has a dog who doesn't know what sit means in some capacity. But that's different to knowing sit and that being relationship changing, like that. It's a different format. It's not teaching sit like a trick. It's teaching sit to build communication. And so oftentimes it's like, it's unpacking, like, do they really know how to sit? And if they do, well, then how is that helping you with your problem? Because you've still got a problem. So if they are so good at sit and drop, why are we still here then? Like, what's breaking down? And so we need to work on that. And that's not saying like I'm a big I don't like the idea of, like when your dog jumps up on you, ask him to sit. Like, I'm not into using obedience for a Band-Aid, like I don't think that's going to solve anything. Or, getting them to sit always at the door or whatever, like get them to just wait at the door and things like that. I'm not huge on that, but it's not about sit or drop. Sit and drop are not about sit and drop. It's about language, impulse control, emotional regulation, leadership, trust. It's about all of those things. And so if we have that, then everything else becomes so much easier. And so it's more about like sometimes, especially too, even with like puppies coming in and, the puppies harassing the kids in the backyard or whatever it might be. And, I say, even if you just do 2 days of practicing sit, your dog's going to understand what yes, no, good dog means, right? And if we've got those 3 things, then we can shape pretty much any behavior that your puppy is coming up with. And it won't take them long for them to have enough understanding that they can apply that elsewhere. It doesn't have to be perfect before you can apply it elsewhere. It just has to be a concept that they starting to get the idea of.
Yeah. We have had a couple of dogs. They do an application form to get into the course, and I just look at their situation and the dog and decide whether or not it's a good fit for them at the moment. And we had one not that long ago, and it was like fair few behavioral issues, and I was like, you're gonna need, we have them all the time actually, and I go, you're gonna need to do something about these behavioral issues. We can help you out or we can refer you on, but I think when you do the course, you're going to get a lot of tools and skills that are going to be very helpful anyway. And I just let people decide which way they want to go, but as long as they know that you're not going to graduate until these behavioral issues
and they're
sorted.
realistic about it.
Yeah. And so, you can do the course if you want, but just be aware, like, these need to be addressed. Obviously any aggression and stuff like that, we do, that's a separate thing. But, like, these things will have to be addressed. It's amazing what, like you say, like once you've got that language with the dogs, then they just, they've addressed a lot of that stuff, and they don't have to do individual training.
Do you know, it's interesting talking about therapy dogs, because that's not my area of expertise, but my dogs have been therapy dogs in the past, and I train a lot of people who have a dog who want to do a program like yours or another program, and so they're sort of just getting the training started before they do all of that sort of thing. And one of the most common things we come up with people at the start who are having some behavior problems is they want to fit their dog into this like mold of a therapy dog, and they're like, so he doesn't really like being touched. How do we fix that? And I'm like, I don't know if he's going to love this job. Like, we can help teach him to be able to go to the vet and do these things, but
to tolerate.
He that's not his jam. Like, find something he likes doing. Like, maybe he doesn't like that, but maybe he really likes lure coursing, or maybe
you can't make any dog a therapy dog.
That's exactly right. I think there's a big common misconception that any dog can do any job, and they may be able to, but want to is a different thing, like
same with horses.
Exactly. Oh, so much with horses. Absolutely. And I think it's hard because once you've got your dog, you've got your dog, you're not going to trade them in for a different model. You've got to deal with what you've got. But if you kind of already have this picture in your head of what you want them to be, which I think is big with anybody who gets a puppy, like they get a puppy it's going to have this personality, and it's like having a child and being like, before they're born, they're going to be a lawyer or they're going to do this. Like, that's not how it works. They get to choose what they like. And so
you'll damage the relationship.
That's right. And that doesn't mean that you don't have influence over the kind of person or dog they're going to become. Like, you get to shape that. But what they like is who they are. Like, nobody in my family is really into animals, but here I am. So nobody chose that for me. But that's just how it happens. So you just like what you like.
Yeah, we want to try and set people up for, we're going to start doing a juniors course so that we can start giving people this information early on. But the goal is the goal is for people to understand that this is what it is to be a therapy dog, and this is what it is to be a therapy dog handler, and these are the things that we're looking for. And if it's your dog's not that, then your dog's not that. And so let's not try and shove a square peg into a round hole. We've stopped doing that years ago now, and it's, you know, it's hard because you're failing people, and you know, like that's their hopes and dreams are shattered.
That's right.
That's why we've improved our application process now and things like that. The backlash that we've had over the years has been horrendous from people who are disappointed that, you know, their dog's just not right. But we have so many, like we do pre-course consults, like we have all
Individual
these
tutoring
options,
as well.
individual tutoring and stuff like that, to try and we do an introductory workshop. We try and get people the information before they register for the course. But I'm not gonna do a full assessment of every dog for free before they do the course. That's not. We want people to be able to assess it for themselves too.
Yeah.
We're going to try and address it more with the juniors course, because I know it's frustrating for people. But when I was first getting into horses, I remember must have been a vet or a chiropractor or someone that had said to me like, "Oh, what are you going to do with your horse?" And I was like, "I don't know, whatever he likes."
Yeah.
And the vet was like,
"What?"
I never hear that. I never hear that ever. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I don't really know him yet."
Yeah.
So see what he
know?
likes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, like I don't know. So I just
exactly. And even like with Savvy, like I was saying to Savvy, you know, like what I really like for my work, what I need is a dog who can emotionally handle being around unstable dogs a lot, you know, like, and that is a tough gig. Like there's not many dogs who can do that happily, you know, like Savvy can do it, but does she want to do it? Like Snickers will like almost laugh in the face of a dog who's trying to kill him, you know, like he'll be like, oh, whatever, you're not phasing me, I'm just going to go sniff over here and do my own thing, you do you, mate. And he's fine with that. Whereas Savvy will tolerate it, but enjoy it is completely different. So we manage who goes where and all of that sort of stuff. But finding the right dog. And that was hard for me to accept because, you know, like that's not really what I need for my work, but I still absolutely love Savvy, you know, like, and so it's just who she is. And so she just does her things.
Yep. And you just make space in your life
for what they are.
And
exactly. Well, and it's the same with my kids, you know, like they're polar opposite to each other, and you just gotta, that's who they are. You just do the things they like doing. If they don't like sport, don't do sport, you know, like it's just who they are.
Yeah.
I want to also add, when we're talking about online courses, it's kind of a booming industry. Like you see so many people throwing online courses out there.
Really
so
frustrating.
when you
it's
exactly.
really frustrating because
anyone can put it up at the moment.
And that's the thing is that almost you get labeled as like, oh, I've got an online course. And because people sort of in COVID put up crap courses that don't really work, but was sort of like a passive income, and now they're like, oh, we're just going to leave that up there. And so then somebody buys it, they're like, online courses don't work. It's like, but it was a Band-Aid solution because they couldn't get to clients. It wasn't a thought out program. And so that can be really hard to deal with. But I mean, I think the good thing for me is because I've been doing it for a long time, I've got like a huge bank of like testimonials and feedback and things like that to be like, people say it's good, I swear. And so I can sort of, you know, use that. And so that's really handy because I think that's, if your clients are happy, you know, that's the end goal.
What I was going to add is, but this is to both of you. What do you think are the things that people should be looking for when they are going online? Because, you know, when I was also looking at Dougie's resource guarding, I went on YouTube, I went everywhere to look up, you know, and there is a range of different
things.
questionable things online. And it was quite overwhelming. Like, thankfully, I also had Sam, but it was quite overwhelming to sort of pick apart who you should listen to. So
I mean, even like
the best indicators of someone that is worth the time to listen to if they're online. Online.
It's confusing as hell for people because I mean, like even I was on Instagram the other day and I was like, one dog trainer was like, whatever you do, don't do this to your dog. And then the next dog trainer was like, you have to do this. And it was the same thing. Like, what? You know, like it's overwhelming and it's confusing for people, especially in this day and age where we're literally bombarded with information constantly. And if you've Googled something, then it's for sure going to show up on Facebook or Instagram all the time. And so you know you're going to get bombarded with it. I think one of the things you really want to look for is support, like how much support, because there's a lot of courses that are sold independent of the trainer. And so, I mean, you can buy like a train your dog. And then, but if you want help, you've got to get it somewhere else, or you've got to buy extra, or whatever it might be. I think looking for help support is really big, and that's something that we really focus on. So in the Dogmanship Training Academy, we have a weekly live Q&A, which you can join via Facebook or Zoom, so you can chat or things like that, and you can ask questions anytime. And I usually make like a video reply so I can explain the tone and how it all works and demo it, sort of thing. And so you can get support whenever you want it. And so I think that's a big point of difference between courses and an actual program. And that's one of the things too, is like, I was sort of, when I created the academy, was it going to be a course, or was it going to be a membership, or how was it going to work? And we have it as a membership because for people coming in, like, part of the reason I did it was I wanted people, no matter what the outside of their life looked like, what they did with dog training, they could come into this space and do it in their own time, in their own way. If they wanted to do a little bit each month, if they had to have a month off, if they went on holidays, like, it wasn't like, if you miss a week, you're out, sort of thing. Which is one of the things that I found really hard for myself, even like when I was doing, trick training class or working with other trainers, was like, sometimes I just couldn't make it for whatever reason one week, and then I'd be behind. And so doing that was really good, I think, in having that. And also because some people come in with really big problems that might take a while. And some people are like, I literally just want to know how to, get my dog to stay on their bed. And it's like, cool, we'll stay for 1 month and then you're good. Like, you don't need to stay for a long time. So it means you can get one problem, your problem solved on a smaller budget. But you can also stay and be part of the community. And most people like the community factor, being able to ask people and talk about dogs with people who actually care, and celebrate, like, who else cares that you went for a walk with your dog? Like, you're like, I went for a walk and I didn't bark at anyone, and they're like, everyone's cheering them on. But like, if you told your friends that, they'd be like, cool,
they don't understand how much of a big deal that is.
So support is huge. Definitely.
I agree with Heidi. I think there's really got to be a mixture. If you're doing an online course, it's fine. Like, if something's recorded or whatever, that's fine. But there's got to be a person. I think there has to be a live person. And we've got so much technology now. There's no reason that we can't do face-to-face virtually. Like, and so people are actually getting access to you. They're hearing from you. Like, and, we do, like, our courses are still a group as well. So you're actually still attending your classes and having group discussions with other people in your group. So you're developing those peer networks as well, sharing ideas and brainstorming and all that sort of stuff. I think that we have enough technology now that there's no excuse to not be doing hybrid stuff where you yourself, you're available, or whoever's running the courses, they're available to the people who have paid the money to participate. We were tossing up doing a self-paced option next year, but I just can't get my head around, like, I want it to be more flexible. I want there to be a more flexible option for people that can't just take whatever off work and stuff. But I just can't get around, like, I just need time with them as well. Like, I don't ever want it to be fully online.
And I think so for the stakes are high for people who come in with you as well, like we were talking about before. The stakes are really high. Like, they've got to have a safe dog. They've got to have a dog who can go into, like, being a therapy dog is not like, just a easy thing to do, like, that's a big gig. It's a big responsibility. So I mean, like, I definitely understand that. But I think also for people looking for dog training, one of the biggest things and the biggest challenges, I think, and the thing people really need to look for is something that you are going to be able to do consistently, like something that you can do. Because for some people, logging in online, they're going to be like, I don't even want to look at my computer at the end of the day. And then for other people, it's like, there's nothing I could think of worse than going out at 7:00 at night to get into a group class. And other people are like, I'm not paying for somebody to come into my home. Like, it depends on what's going to be consistent and something you can do going forward, because if you're not going to be able to do it consistently, you're never going to get results. It's like signing up for a gym membership and never going. Like, you have to actually do it.
Exactly.
So what's going to work for you? And I do, like, I mean, I've got the online, but I also do lots of private lessons, and most of my private lessons now are working with dogs who have some sort of severe anxiety or aggression or something like that, because those people have contacted me about the academy. I've been like, it's probably not a great fit. Let's do private lessons instead, because it's not safe to do so. And so it's also freed me up a lot to be able to work with those people, because I only have limited hours in a week, and I'm not the kind, I don't want to work full time. I've got little kids and I don't want to do that. And so it frees me up to use my time really effectively while still helping the most amount of people that I can. Because like in my Q&A, like somebody might ask a question, but then afterwards somebody else will message me like, oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad they asked that, because now I know for da-da-da or whatever. And so you actually, one person asks a question, but you're helping everybody.
And still getting that group training thing. Because that's how I learned so much in the beginning as well, is for group training. Yeah. Like you're learning not just your dog, like everyone else's dog. And I had a good dog, so I would have learned jack shit if I'd done individual training. Like I had to watch everybody else's dogs mulleting around and carrying on like pork chops to learn anything.
Helps to generalize the things that you're learning.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things that's disappointing that came about from the COVID time is I think there's a couple of training organizations that started up some staff, trained and assessed some dogs, and then like shut up shop, or like have refused to go back to places to reassess dogs and things like that. So we do get people that have contacted us who have done and paid for their training elsewhere, but they actually can't reassess there anymore.
That is so tough.
It sucks, man. And I've tried to problem solve with people and find a way to that we can reassess them. The problem that I have though is that the majority of our course is handler training. I'm actually passing handlers as well as dogs. So I don't really want purple bandana dogs out that the handler hasn't got the training that we deliver, and I don't know what they've been told by other organizations. I don't know what they train. So it's put me in a really difficult position where I've tried to like, I want to help you guys, but I just don't think that we can have you not do at least a version of what I need you to have the information that we give people, because every time we run a course, the cohort by the end of it is like, yep, so you don't know what you don't know. Like far out. Like we just didn't know any of that, like that sort of thing. So I think it's hard for people to build trust in a business these days, because it's so easy to spout crap, it's online, and it's so easy to say I can do this, and this, and it's and preach whatever you want without actually being able to back it up. And even like in the academy, sometimes like I'll have a new person who asks a question and I'll make a video and they'll be like, I cannot believe you just made me a video just for me, like a personalized video. It's like, what? Like it took me like 5 minutes. Like it wasn't hard to do. I didn't have to like rehearse or set up or anything, like it's fine. But people are not used to getting good service. People are not used to actually having people follow through and people who actually care and want to see you succeed. It's not that common. And like, the videos are easy for me to make because I'm with my dogs all the time. And so that whatever that skill is that you wanted to learn, or that issue, or like the application of that, it'll pop up.
Yes.
Like,
it's so funny you say that, because I was saying to my husband the other day, it's getting harder to make like content or videos and stuff because my dogs are old. I'm like, wake up and do something.
Yeah.
Look alive, guys. Look alive. Come on.
Make a choice. Make a red choice. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like I was in, I think 3 courses ago that someone asked about teaching a dog to stop, like when they're walking along and you say stop. And that's not something that we teach in the course, but I was like, oh, this is how you do it. And then like I was walking to work from the car park and I just filmed the two, like, the finished stop and also how you train the stop. And so the next week, by the time I was back up again doing their videos for the next week, I was like, oh yeah, here's that stop video as well. It's in this other helpful ideas folder or something. They're like, oh thanks.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. Like,
not hard to do.
It doesn't matter that it's not a part of the course. No. Who cares? Like it's useful to have. I like having a stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
I use it every day.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people too, they get caught up in like, oh, is it going to be really well-produced video? And, like, of course, we're always trying to make it look as good as it can and make the audio as good as it can be. But if you've got, like, you can understand it, that's more important. Like, are they
Exactly.
talking to you in a way that you can understand? Like, I
Yeah.
had somebody email me the other day and they'd be like, oh, I finally feel like I'm doing a course where you're not talking to me in another language, because they're
Yeah.
talking dog trainer talk. And like, I don't even
Yeah.
talk dog trainer talk with dog trainers anymore. Like, I don't
No.
want to talk like that. I want to talk as if I'm talking to, you know, my best friend or whatever
Yeah.
about it. And so I think that's huge, if you can tell somebody in a way that just is like, oh yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
That's more important than anything.
I gave up on the video professionalism very early on. I was like, this is a pain in the ass. Like, I've got
Takes
the
a lot of
mic
time.
and man, it is a pain, like, to make sure things, and because I'm trying to film stuff, you know, on the fly, and as the dogs are doing it as well, I'm not setting it up. Like, I'm now just like, so I've just got, like, my phone's in my pocket and I just pull it out. Look, this is what the dogs chase the mowers like idiots. This is how I get them to stop doing it. That's why I can let them do it for a little bit, because it makes them so happy, and Sonny's going to die one day and it's his favorite thing in the world. So I let him chase the mower for a minute or two, and then I tell him to stop doing it. Same with the hose. You know, like, this is what it looks like, and you know, I'm not going to set it up. I can't be bothered. I'm going to mow the lawn. Like, come on, man, I'm just trying to feed the horses here. Like, we'll just do this quick video, I'll show you what it is, and then you got it. You know? Like,
and people relate to it because you're not in this, like, studio. Like, nobody's training their dog in a studio. Like, everybody's got, and like, people, the videos that people always say, oh, I got so much of that, is like my kids having a, like, full meltdown in the background, and you know, the husband's like, it's getting ready, or, you know, like, something like that's going on. Or like, I had one video where my kids just, like, ran across, like, nude in the background. I'm like, trying to, like, block them out, you know, like, things like that. People like that because they're like, hang on, if you can do this and you're a normal person, then I can do it because I'm a normal person, you know, and I have distractions. Like, I'm not training my dog in a vacuum. Like, I'm literally just doing it with the same life as everybody else. And I think that makes it definitely more realistic for people.
And those real life examples, like, I always tell people, like, once you've trained your dog, put a bit of time into this, train your dog, your training sessions become your life. You know, like, you're just training them throughout your life because you're just using this language, and you got it, you know, expectations, and then you've got just fun. Like, my dogs are just having fun. I know. Constantly.
Somebody
like,
said
they have
to me,
the
like,
best life.
how much dog training do you do a day? And I was thinking, God, I haven't set up a training session for a while, especially, like, now they're older. I'm not, like, teaching them to do backflips anymore. They can barely walk. But they, you know, if I do a boundary, if I've left my front door open for an hour, oh, sweet, I've done an hour of training. And if I've told them to go on their bed for dinner, oh, cool, 2 hours of training today, tick. You know, like, all these things, but you forget after a while, those become easy. And that's something we talk about a lot in the academy as well, is that having your goals and breaking them down also makes you see, hang on a minute, we may not be there yet, but wow, we're doing better than we were last week. Like, if you can be better than last week, that's great. You know, like, it doesn't have to be a huge jump. And so I think we often can take for granted the things we do. And don't you notice it though, if you go down, like, to a cafe or walk past somebody, like, oh my God, your dogs are so good. And you're like, because they're walking, like, which is good. They sat. Is that the thing? You know, like, it's, you forget that those things to some people are, like,
the biggest
incredible
deal. Huge deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
it's good to be reminded of that sometimes.
So I think keeping an eye out for businesses that are, you know, online courses and things like that have sort of popped up. Maybe it's just a recording, you know, and you're not actually getting any access to, like, in some circumstances for some stuff, that's fine. Like, if it's just if you, or, you know, you can buy like a 2-hour lecture and that's still PD, you know, like, that's fine. But in terms of, the online courses and things like that.
If that's going to solve your problem.
Exactly.
But I mean, for a lot of people, and that's a thing too, is to be wary of, I mean, some of them can be great depending on the problem, but like, courses who are splintering off problems, like, this is how you fix reactivity or whatever. But like we were talking about, like, everything is interlinked. Like, you don't fix that problem without working on other things at the same time. And if you do, you're either putting a Band-Aid on it, or you're not doing it in a humane way, you know, like, you cannot be doing both of those things. It doesn't work. And so you really need to have a look at, are they dealing with actual what's going on here in the relationship, and is this going to help me with future problems, you know, if something pops up, because they're dogs and they're going to have different behaviors throughout their lifetime.
How
And
much are they
and can
talking
I
about the
generalize it?
psychology of the dog as well, not just the behavior?
Yeah. So as a like summary of the pros, I think it's pretty clear, like, we're both, Heidi and I, we're both seeing dogs getting great. We're seeing handlers getting great. I think there's heaps of, so we went online because of COVID, but we're staying online. We're not going back to face-to-face courses. I'm seeing way more retention of learning in the handlers. And then I'm seeing less stressed dogs because the handlers are better at handling their dogs. And so, inconsistent handling, we know it is stressful for dogs because they can't find the right answer, or you tell them everything's right, or you tell them everything's wrong.
Yeah, but also for a dog trying to, like, how hard is it for us to sit down for an hour and like fully absorb everything that's happening in that hour? We expect that in a private lesson or a group class, and sometimes we expect that for full days in, like workshops and things like that. And if your dog has no understanding prior to that, so they're emotionally trying to process what the hell is going on, it's overwhelming, and it is really hard for them to learn. And like we know it as dog trainers, we say, if you're going to teach your dog something new, start off by doing it with no extra distractions. Like literally teach it in the most easy environment for your dog to learn, so they can grasp it first before you add in more challenges. Yet then we're like, so to do that, come to a group class. Like, that doesn't make sense. They're not going to absorb it. What we're trying to do at the group class is teach the person so they can go home and apply it to their dog. So there's no need to do that in that context. We can do that online.
That's it. And we're working with dogs that they haven't been worked before, so they don't have a work ethic.
No.
So they have to build that up. Like, they're going to get tired. Their brains get tired quickly. Their bodies get tired quickly. They don't have the mental or physical stamina for long training sessions.
No.
So you can come here for an hour face-to-face if you want and pay an individual training fee, but we're going to spend 45 minutes of that talking about stuff, and I'm going to do demonstrations and cycle through my dogs and, do that sort of stuff and do a little bit of handling with your dog, that sort of thing. To the point, like when I do lessons, so if I do, depending on what horses I'm working with, but I'll take 2 horses to a 1-hour lesson and swap them every 15 minutes.
That's right.
And swap them over, because I'm like, well, otherwise we're going to spend this next 15 minutes giving the horse a break, talking about, my social life or whatever. Or we could swap horses out, and then, that one's having a break and this one's having a 15-minute, and then that one's having a break. It is the best way to learn.
And also because once the behavior becomes more automatic for the dog. So like when we learn to drive a car and we're like, check the mirrors, hold it here and here, indicator on, like you're consciously making all of those decisions when you first drive a car. But now you get in the car and you're like talking to somebody and you're like, kind of remember how you got from A to B, like it's all automatic. And that's the same for our dogs. Like right now they're like, sit, cool, got it. Like they're having to really concentrate on it and concentrate on holding it and the language and what is like the good dog tones and all of that. But once we've gotten over that hump, they're doing it like without even thinking. And that's something like in the academy, we talk about obedience in habit loops. Like that's what we're doing. We're using habit loops to create a behavior, and we're blocking old habits that we don't want to pop up. Like that's essentially when we talk about a correction or a consequence, what I'm talking about is how can we block that from reoccurring? Like how can we go, that's not a good habit. Let's stop that from happening. But then what's the new habit and how can we create that? And so that's because what we want is for it to become automatic. Like sometimes with my dogs, I'm recalling them and I'm like, they're halfway back and you can sort of see them like, oh yeah, I'm coming back. Like they haven't really even thought about it because it's just so automatic for them now. Like it's like getting in the car, they're not thinking about it. They just respond.
Yep. So I think those things like, we've made the decision, we're staying online. I've got less stress handlers, less stress dogs, better handlers, better dogs at the end of the courses. We can provide them more support. They've learnt to self-evaluate. Yeah. So I'm having less, what used to happen is I'd try and give someone some feedback like that this isn't really going that well at the moment. And they'd be surprised, like, what? And then get all shitty about it. Whereas now, they're the one that's coming to me saying,
hang on, something's not right.
Looks not
I can
right.
see like it's not what you showed me.
So people are they're not caught off guard because we're building that ability to self-evaluate so they can see what I can see. Whereas before it was me watching them and then saying, listen, mate, you've got, you're all over the place. Like, you know.
I don't know if you saw a while ago, I had a foster dog, Bella, who had come from the middle of nowhere where they found her and her litter mate. And so she was like not well socialized. And so anyway, she was like 8 months or something by this point, I think, when I got her, and reactive when other dogs would be barking or whatever on walks, like she would just lose the plot. And so we went past the same house every day with dogs barking so that I could film like day 1, day 2, day 3 in the same context, in the same environment. But it happens quick. Like we're literally spending less than 5 minutes outside these people's house to, their poor people. But it's not working.
Yeah, I was like, they must love you, Heidi. What's that woman doing at the front of our house? Cause the dogs to bark. Get out.
Like, I feel like I'm doing something wrong. He's stalking me, just videoing me, watching me down the street. And so I'm like, if somebody comes out, I'm going to quickly turn around and yell, leave me alone, and just start running away and see if you can. And so, so we were filming all of this each session day to day, but then because it happened so quick, I showed the whole video in the academy, but then we rewatched it and paused and talked and this is why I did this then, and this is why I did this then, and this is why I corrected this, and this is why I rewarded this, and whatever. So we could break it down, because for a lot of people watch that, but what just happened? It looks smooth when you do it. Like it looks like, hey, that was like 3 days and she's walking past it, but for like you didn't see all those little things that are happening, and the way that I'm talking and why I changed my tone and all of that sort of stuff. And so you didn't really see that in there. So I think that was huge, because reactivity is probably the number one thing people contact me about. Or overreactivity on walks, like when they see another dog, whatever. So having that breakdown and seeing it in the same context every day, that's big for people. And I think then they could sort of break it down for themselves a little bit better, like you're saying, that self-evaluation, break it down and be like, all right, I need to take this a step back and sort of look at what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, why am I saying this, and those sorts of things, because they were overcomplicating it for most people. Definitely.
There you go.
Yeah.
Online dog training. It is a thing. It can be done. I'm sure it can be done poorly.
It can.
If you want to have a look at YouTube and TikTok and all that sort of stuff.
But I mean, doctors are learning how to be doctors do surgery online. Like if we can't teach dogs online, we've got something wrong with us, like it should
absolutely be just because it hadn't been done much before, it doesn't mean that exactly.
Absolutely.
We love it. Heidi loves it. There are other companies that are still doing face-to-face, so they can do that, and we will do this because I love it. We still do some stuff face-to-face as well for our local guys, obviously. Our temperament assessments all get done face-to-face. They just get done by dog trainers all over Australia for us. We have to do that face-to-face. That's a no. Obviously has to be done.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Cool. Thanks for the chat, Heidi.
Good.
Thank you.
Talk about this all day.
Really good.
Same. I just keep going. Max might get bored.
Sorry, Max. No way. I say I'm just constantly like, oh gosh, next bit. No, so good. Covered some really good questions as well that people have obviously asked over the last few years. So no, it's very good, very helpful.
Awesome. I'm glad.
Thank you so much, Heidi.
No worries. It was awesome. You're welcome.
So what, I was just going to say quickly for the listeners, where can they find you?
I also have a podcast, which is called Dog Training Tips, which are just like tiny little tidbits. So usually 5 minutes or less. So they can have a listen to that. You can also find me on Facebook or Instagram as Dogmanship Training, or my website, which is dogmanshiptraining.com. If they are interested in coming into the academy, they can watch a free introductory workshop, which sort of goes through it a little bit and takes them through what is actually in there, which they can find at dogmanshiptraining.com/free.
Okay, fantastic. And I'll put all of those links in the description for everyone as well. So
awesome. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you
Is
so
it all right
much.
if I steal your free intro workshop idea, Heidi?
Of course.
Thanks, man.
I mean, if I
Legend.
go in and my slides are your slides, it'll be a bit tough. But,
It's just Heidi there.
me.
I think just as you said that, I was like, that would be such a good idea for me to talk people through even like our application form and like, this is why we do what we do. And that's a good idea, man.
For me too, because people are skeptical now of online, it does sort of give them a first look at like, I actually have a face and, you know, like all
You're
of that
real.
sort of stuff. Yeah. And send emails and stuff so they can ask me questions before they get started if they're stuck or want to know if something's included or whatever.
Very helpful. Yeah.
Good.
Okay. All
Good
right.
idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
No worries.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you're interested in studying with Therapy Dogs Australia or you have a few more questions before deciding, please get in touch with us by emailing courses@therapydog.com.au or visiting our website at www.therapydog.com.au for more information and FAQs.